Hello and welcome to In the Light, Growing Your Soul with me, Anna Isabel. And I am so delighted because I have Avikal Constantino with me today. Hello, Avikal.
Hello, Anna. Isabel. Which one, Anna or Isabel or both?
Anna is great.
Great. Okay.
So I was very curious about your book when I first got it, simply because of the title, Who is In? So maybe that would be a good place to start. What is that title about?
Okay, so in human history, there have been basically for millennia some questions that have been considered fundamental questions for every human being. Doesn't matter if we ask them or not, they exist in our soul, they exist in our consciousness. And there are many, the most fundamental question has to do with who is this human being that in this moment is speaking? So when I refer and I look and I feel into this, yes, but who is this? So this question has been formulated in many different ways. So one of the ways, for example, the Tibetan asked the question, where am I? The Ramana Maharshi about a couple of 100 years ago insisted on asking the question, what is the nature of I? Other people would ask, who am I? And one other question that came up is, who is in? Now, all these questions are pretty much the same quest, and yet there are slightly differences that come up as we investigate. So I've been working a lot with who am I for at least for 15 years. And then at some point, Osho, which was my spiritual teacher since 40 years, he actually introduced the question, who is in? So I started working with who is in. And after many years of pondering, because I really wanted to write this book, but at the same time, I needed to find the right time. And because I am a writer, so I know that I can jump into a project, but I needed really to be in that space where the book was not written from knowledge, but was written from direct experience, moment to moment to moment, because that's what the quest is about. It's not about ideas, it's not about concepts. So then the title came up, Who is In? And then immediately in the same breath came the second part of the title, Beyond the Self-Image, which was a way to actually open up to a complete, even wider dimension. And that was about 2 years ago.
I like that addition, beyond self-image, because that's the key, isn't it? We can say, who am I? And that's, or who is in, but that's as distinct from the story that we tell ourselves.
And others.
And also, I think sometimes it's that inner voice. You know, there have been 1 or 2 occasions in my life when I'm in the middle of doing something and this knowing voice says, what are you doing? What's going on here? Stop it. That's not the right thing to do. It's not the best thing to do. So who is that voice? And who is the person doing the action? Which one? Which one? So when I read your title, Who is In, there were a few things that came to mind. And one of those was that memory of this inner voice that kind of steps in and says, excuse me, what are you doing?
Yes. Well, Well, this is the quest, Anna. The quest is exactly this. Okay, in this moment, who is speaking? There is a beautiful poem from Rumi, this famous Persian poet, which is called, "Who is speaking through my mouth?" And then this is a question, okay, in this moment, yes, I am speaking, and there is a presence here that is communicating and is relating to you, is relating to wherever people at some point will watch this podcast. And yet there isn't an entity which I can point that as is somewhere behind another little computer inside saying, okay, now you say this, so you say that. That entity does not exist. It's a false idea. It's an idea that has been implanted basically by society. The idea that I exist as a separate entity. And therefore, as I exist as a separate entity, I'm separated from you, from the world, from God, from the animals, from the plants. So separation becomes the foundation of my existence as an entity. So this is what the quest is about. It's about questioning this belief. Do I really exist as a separate entity? Or I exist just as a pure presence embodied in a physical body, which has a certain kind of story, which has a certain kind of relationship with life, but yet does not exist as a thing.
Just listening to you, I got this image, those disco balls that, have the lights that refracts from it. I was just thinking about that as a metaphor for what we are, that we are all these little windows of light that are in this ball. And by virtue of the fact that we are part of it, we are one part of the whole, but because we're all kind of looking in different directions, we forget that we're part of that whole. And it just made me think of that.
We forget that we are the light.
Yes.
Because in the light, there is no separation. The light is light in its purity. But then, because it goes through these little holes, it's actually a very beautiful image, because as it goes through each little hole, the light starts believing, I am only this, the one that goes through the little hole, and I am separated from all the other little holes. And this is not true. And at this point, this is not even a question of mysticism or religion. Even quantum physics talk about this, Even modern work with neurology, shows certain things that mystics were saying thousands of years ago. And this is actually very beautiful, because a lot of people need that, and myself too, need that kind of scientific digestion so that the mind can be content and say, okay, yes, I not only can feel that, can sense that, can long for that, I can also understand it intellectually. It's not by mistake that some of the most famous scientists, they were also mystics. At some point, Heisenberg or Einstein, they were just going, hey guys, yes, no, we can prove certain things, and yet there is the beyond, and the beyond is so magnificent.
It's important to see ourselves as individuals, first and foremost, because within that, and you said it, we forget that we are the light. So as individuals, we have something unique to contribute to the whole.
Absolutely.
And we need a degree of separation in order to understand that uniqueness and that part that that important part that we play in the whole. So we need to separate, but only to a certain extent, because even as we separate, if we forget that we are part of the whole, then we lose ourselves and we lose our sense of uniqueness.
Absolutely. I completely agree, Anna. It's the question is, how can we own all of it? How can we own the fact that we are the totality, and in the same time, a unique manifestation of that totality? Because that's where evolution and uniqueness can manifest. And that's our job. And in fact, you know, like, it's interesting because a few days ago, I was facilitating a course, and I was talking about the cross, and because it was actually Easter, and the cross. I've never been a good Christian. I have to say that I'm not a believer. I'm not a faithful person, but the cross, in my experience, represents exactly that, the intersection of the vertical, where there is totality and eternity and unity, and the horizontal of time and space, where we manifest. And we are constantly in that point of intersection. The question is, can we be there consciously or not? Because we can definitely be there consciously. That's the point of resurrection. Every moment, completely new, you know, completely available. And I find it fascinating because, you know, it's really our potential in all possible dimensions. But I agree with what you say. Individuality is not bad at all. Individuality is how we know ourselves in the embodiment, in the incarnation, in the uniqueness that each one of us is. And that's somewhere, sometimes spiritual seekers gets a little bit afraid there.
Yes, absolutely. Because neither, at this point, as you put it, in that center, what we need is the integration of the knowledge of both, understanding who we are as individuals, because we came here in this moment, in this body,
Yes.
For a reason.
Absolutely.
And so that must not be denied. And we know the trauma and catastrophe of ideologies that deny individuality. So much atrocity is committed when individuality is denied.
Yes.
On the other hand, we also need to remember that we are not alone and that we are part of something bigger. And, you know, sometimes I hear people say, oh, you know, in the unit, you look at the sky and you understand the enormity of it all, and you feel so insignificant. You realize just how insignificant humanity is. And I think, no, no, actually, that's completely the wrong conclusion. You know, what we should be doing is looking at it. And I am an astrologer. And so I look at the sky and I'm filled with wonder and awe, and I love it. And I think, we are made of stardust. And we are not at all insignificant because we are a part of it. How can we be a part of it and not be significant? That is a denial. So we must remember both aspects are important.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that each manifestation is the center of the universe. Because actually, no, we live in a universe where every single manifestation is the center of the universe. And that includes a sense of humbleness and glory at the same time. And we need to own both, the humbleness of being part of this magnificence and expression of this magnificence, and in the same time, the fact, okay, I am the center of this universe, and I have a responsibility. And the responsibility is to actually co-create this universe where I am living. So I need to, use my consciousness, my love, all my potential, and own also all my shadow and all my disasters and all my whatever, because they are all part of this unity in this universe. So I, for example, think it's very different to say I'm an individual and to say I'm an individualist. Because an individual, so to have a certain clarity, the individualist lives in separation and appropriation, but the individual, not at all. And that's beautiful. In fact, is really magnificent when we see each other blooming in our individuality.
In my work also as a hypnotherapist, this is the whole crux of the therapy sessions, is to help people understand and own their individuality so that they can be empowered to participate in the whole. And so that is the essence, I think, of healing that we all need. We need to understand that we are not alone and that we are an important part of life and the universe in which we participate. So that's the beauty. Now, I'm wondering, Avikal, how did your spiritual journey begin?
Well, I don't know if I will ever be able to answer that question, but I don't know. I don't really know how it began, because that's something that I felt since I was very small. I felt a connection, and I felt also the pain of the separation. I felt these two things at the same time. I remember well one episode when I was probably 12. I had moved from Sicily, where I was born, and I was living in Venice, where my mom is from. And one day I was walking around Venice, and suddenly I had this feeling of having around me a sort of wall made of glass that was keeping me separate from the world around me. And I could see through, and I could feel that people could see through, but still there was something in between. And that sense of gap, later on, when I was more a teenager, it started manifesting as a very deep sense of melancholy. And I was questioning, because I had a good life. I was playing basketball. I was going to school, even though I didn't like it particularly. My family was really supportive. My grandfather was a beautiful man, and my father and my mom too. And Venice was fantastic. And yet there was that melancholy, and the melancholy was that gap between feeling the separation and feeling the longing for unity. Of course, I didn't have these words at that age. They came later, but the feeling was very strong and very powerful. So at some point, I started acting on it. And so, but the way I acted on it was how young men like me were acting in 1968, which was a revolution. Yes. Going for the revolution. So it was really about, coming out with my strengths and my fear and my passion for years. And yet inside I knew that there was something that had to do with spirit, not with the revolution, at least not the social revolution, at least only in part. So then when at some point this story with the politics finished, which I was about 24, 25, something like that, I got really interested in Carlos Castaneda and magic, and and I went to live in Mexico for 3 years. And because I was also an anthropologist, so I worked with the shamans there, and I did the researches on magic and madness and all these kind of things. And little by little, something started kind of integrating inside. Okay, where am I really? Where do I want to go? No? And I had come in touch already through the books with Osho. So I went to India. I traveled to. Basically, I've been traveling all my life, you know. And then meditation, martial arts. I did like nearly 35 years of martial arts. So my body was really focused on centering and grounding and finding my capacity to stay present. So little by little things started kind of coming together. And yet, one thing was clear, because I remember saying to a friend when I was already 27, I think, I just finished the military service. I told my friend one night, I said, look, the only thing that matters for me in this life is to find out who I am. And I was even surprised myself about what I said. Oh, okay. And actually that became the point of convergence. Like a lot of things started kind of coming to that point until I found a particular process, which is called Satori, that I could learn and start working with.
That is, well, it's a colorful journey, isn't it?
It is.
It's a wonderful, colorful journey. And I'm always fascinated by the way in which we find our path. And there's just an endless number of ways in which we seem to stumble onto our path. And I think for most of us, we do stumble onto it. It's as you described, there's that inner sense very early on for many of us that there's something missing. And very often for most people, it's a point of crisis that makes them start seeking.
Yeah.
But for many also, we kind of stumble onto it, and we meet it somewhere on our road, and we go, oh, that's interesting. I think that's what I'm looking for. And yet it's not the thing itself. It's a pointer, and we're just taken in different directions. And so yours, when I asked you, how did your spiritual journey begin? It involved literal journeys, because you were actually traveling to different places to experience different approaches to spirituality. So that brings me then to Satori, which you say you've discovered.
Yes. Yes.
Tell us about Satori.
Okay. Satori is a process that goes for a week and is based on a traditional Zen retreat, which traditionally is called sesshin, where the monks or the disciples, they work with paradoxical questions, which are called koans. Like, for example, tell me what was your face before your mother was born, or how many lives has a Buddha, or whatever it is, you know. And this is the traditional. It was the Rinzai school of Zen. But then in another part of this tradition was working only with a limited number of questions, which they are called existential questions. Who am I? Who is in? What is love? What is freedom? What is truth? What is another? And then there are like about 15, 14, something like that. Basic question for every human being. And this process, the way it is now, was put together by a Zen teacher in America in the middle 60s, like 67 or something like that, because he decided, okay, instead of sitting in front of a wall, because the traditional way, and ask the koan, how about if we put human beings one in front of each other? And that there is so much more energy happening there. And that's exactly what we did. So the Satori is a process where participants, they sit in couples and they ask each other, tell me who is in, or tell me who am I, or tell me what love is. And they go back and forth for a few sessions, you know. And at some point, what happens is what is called a direct experience. So basically, you get so exhausted with your question, you don't have anymore any answers. And then suddenly the mind stops and something else happens. There is a direct experience of, oh, I am love, or I am freedom. And that for some people can be very fast, for other people takes longer. That depends, you know. And that's the process. And it goes for a week. And we work a few hours every day, about 14 hours every day, interchanging meditations and inquiry sessions. And now I'm leaving in a few days, and I go to Greece to facilitate a 2-week Satori, so 14 days. And we have people, it's great because we do it every year and a half, and we have people coming from Japan, from Mexico, from America, from Italy, from Germany, from Australia, from Switzerland. It's beautiful. It's just wonderful. 2 weeks of holiday for me. I feel it like that, you know. I have 2 weeks that I can just hang out with my questions and not even have to try to find an answer.
I absolutely love it. And as I am indeed enjoying your book tremendously. So I just remind everyone that the book that we are discussing is called Who is In? And I'm going to be putting a link to that in the description box. Avikal, if people wanted to find out more about the retreats that you're running, the courses that you're doing, how do they do that?
Okay, my personal website is avikal.co, without the M, avikal.co. And there, it is in English, and they will find all the information about the future retreats. There is also another one, which is integralbeing.com, and that's more my institute. Integralbeing.com, and there they find both in English and in Italian. So they find also the programs in Italy. And yeah, so everything is there available. And then, of course, they can go on Facebook and on Instagram, Avikal Constantino, they find me there.
Wonderful. I'm just making a note because I'll be putting this in the description box so that people very, very easily. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you a lot. And I really appreciate you inviting me. And and as you said, this added even more to my beautiful day.
Wonderful. I'm so pleased. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful week. Goodbye.
Goodbye.